Good morning and welcome to our November Cabinet meeting for BCP Council. Can I just start by apologising for the delay? In that we've had an issue with the live streaming, a technical issue with the live streaming, which has meant we've got that going now partially. I believe we've got audio only, and we're looking to rectify the video feed. We wanted to move the meeting forward. For clarity, we are also recording the meeting on Teams, and we will put a full recording with video up of that later. So please accept our apologies for the delayed start to this meeting. Other than that, welcome. We've got some good and exciting business to take forward, and before we get on to that, I'll just move to our Democratic Services Officer to refer to the housekeeping document.
Thank you. Please note that this meeting of the Cabinet is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. Please could everyone present follow these ground rules. Only speak when invited to by the Chairman. If accessing via Teams, turn on your video function when invited to speak and state your name. Please use your microphones when speaking and mute or turn off your microphone when you are not talking. If you are accessing via Teams and you'd like to speak on an item, please indicate that you wish to do so by utilising the raise your hand feature in the bar at the top of the Teams window. For those in the room, if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by where the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point along Braidley Road under the flyover or in the surface car park at the front of the building. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. Okay, so we'll move now to agenda item 1, which is apologies. I believe we've had apologies from Councillors Mike and Nicola Green, and that's all that I've been notified of. So agenda item 2 is declarations of interest. I'd just like to note, in terms of agenda item 6, one of our engineering factories does have a lease over one of the sites in the confidential appendices. We're not have any interest in acquiring that, so I've had taken advice, and I can continue with that item. I'll now bring in Councillor Brooks. Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Leader. A declaration in relation to agenda item 9, housing and property compliance update. I am a director of Bournemouth Building Maintenance Limited. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, any other declarations of interest? No, not seeing any. So we move to agenda item 3, which is a confirmation of minutes. We've all had those shared, so I'm very happy to propose, and I believe, Phil, you're seconding. Yes, great. Any questions or comments on those minutes? No. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you. Okay, we move to agenda item 4, which is public issues, and I can advise there have been no questions, statements or petitions submitted by members of the public on this occasion. So we'll move to agenda item 5, and as is normal, the recommendations from overview and scrutiny committees, we will do those in the items that they come up. So effectively the main item I'll be calling Councillor Lawrence Williams on is agenda item 6, which is a financial strategy update, which I'll move to now. And I'll introduce the report, and then Councillor Williams, I'll bring you in for the overview and scrutiny. Okay, so so this is something we've been doing every month. We've had a really a challenging time across the country in terms of local government finances, and what we wanted to do, our approach to that was to make sure we were every month we were bringing a report to Cabinet to discuss our progress. Just to take a step back, just to set some context up. Since we set our budget in February, we've had obviously Putin's war in Ukraine, and the resultant mass cost of living pressures in there. For us as a council, we anticipate that's going to cost us in the region of £25 million this year, and we think it's effectively £30 million for next year, 23-24. So really significant impact, and that's why we've had to take extra steps to really review our budgets and put this council in a really strong financial footing going forward. So that's what we've done. I think we've gone through a process where we originally had a £36 million gap for next year. We moved that down to 16 million. We've displayed how we can deliver that at a balanced position, and although more detail has in terms of what some of those items are, has moved as we were doing the fine work with officers and stakeholders about how we moved to that balanced budget position. We're still there now, which is great. I'll just pause to sincerely thank actually Cabinet and CMB colleagues for the significant amount of work that's gone into that over the last few months, and the fact that we're now displaying a surplus in year of over £8 million and a balanced position for next year is really quite extraordinary work, and I appreciate what's been done on that. We see often, across the national and local press, how some of our other authorities are really struggling across the country with these cost of living pressures. We are really fortunate that we've come into this off the back of our local government reorganisation. Those decisions made in 2019 that's effectively saved us in the region of £50 million a year recurring up to this point. If we hadn't done that, if we hadn't had that savings, we would be in as difficult a financial position as many of our comparators. And the fact that we've now got the next phase of our transformation journey, which looks to save in the region of £50 million over the next the period of our MTFP, that gives us some real comfort and security around how we'll be able to effectively continue a balanced and better budget position across the life of the MTFP. And in context, that is really quite a positive position. In terms of the specific report, we've got a confidential appendix which talks at how we will be looking to fulfil our expenditure around transformation. I've alluded to what we want to do with transformation. We want to save a further £50 million, to making this the most efficient local government operation in the country. We know we can. We believe we can do that, but we need to fund it. So we've got two methods of funding that. One would be through a minded to decision from DLAP around a capitalisation direction. We would prefer not to, or at least try not to take a capitalisation direction. So we've looked at some non-strategic, non-core assets that we could dispose of as capital receipts under the government's flexible use of capital receipts programme, which is designed to help people fund items like transformation. So that is so that's what we're doing. If we need to talk or discuss the confidential appendices, we will need to drop below the line. I'd look to try and have as much of that conversation above the line as possible if we can. So that's probably all I need to do in terms of introducing the report. I've perhaps come to Councillor Broadhead to second it, and then we'll bring in the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny. Phil.
Thank you very much, Chair. And just to continue on with I think the real usefulness of having this process every month, getting ahead of what is a very difficult situation, not just actually in the country, but indeed across the world. The inflationary pressure that the war in Ukraine has put not just on businesses and families, but also government and local government, just cannot be underestimated. You gave some of the headline figures around the £55 million extra of just inflationary related pressures that we are having to deal with over the next 2 years. But to put that in real terms, what that means is things like our utility cost, powering our street lights, is costing us around £2 million extra than we budgeted for in March. And that's just one of the things that we have to consider. So the fact that we are now sat here 2-3 months ahead of our budget setting in February, presenting not only a position where we've got to this year of having a surplus of 8.5 million, which will really help mitigate the challenges of next year, but also having a plan which we're now implementing to move forward, I think is a real testament to the work, not just of Cabinet, but also the entire the council operation and all of our stakeholders as well. So it's really challenging times, and one only needs to open the newspapers and hear the real worries of a number of councils around the country that are teetering on the edge. So the fact that we're sat here with a plan, I think, will be really heartening to hear for a lot of our residents. A couple of extra points I wanted to bring out, Chairman. First of all, around consultation, we've always taken an approach that consultation and engagement with our residents is at the heart of what we do, not just after the event, but before the event as well. And that's why I'm really pleased that as part of the budget setting process that we are going to be doing, we've already launched a major consultation exercise with residents to find out the services that they value most, the services that they think need improving, so that we can use that feedback as we look to prepare the budget budget next year in difficult times, but with a level of optimism that we can respond to those to that consultation and what residents are telling us. That's never really been done before in the way that we're doing now. So I'd urge any residents or even businesses that are out there to look online, look at our budget consultation, get involved and tell us the services that you would like to see, not just protected, but sometimes things where we might need to go a bit further in the future as well. What we're also doing as part of that consultation exercise is really stepping up our approach with working with other partners, charities and stakeholders to look at how we can deliver services differently. Councils are good at some things, they're not good at everything, and there are a number of services that we currently deliver that would absolutely be better delivered, certainly in a more financially sustainable way, by others, and that could be groups, that could be individual residents. So within that consultation, we're also urging people to tell us where they think they could help us out as well. You know, as I mentioned, councils across the country are cutting services. They're closing things like leisure centres and all sorts of assets to meet the financial challenges. We don't want to do any of that. We think we won't have to take those difficult decisions with a lot of those things, particularly if we can get others involved and to find ways that we can deliver our services differently. I think one of the real benefits, if you like, of the pandemic was the re-emergence of community spirit and volunteers. I think we had over 3,000 volunteers, maybe even more, that came out of the pandemic process, and we badged that together as our Together We Can programme. We're in difficult times now, which is why we're relaunching Together We Can, because together, working with our partners, with our residents, we can make sure that in these very difficult times we continue to thrive, and I think that's really important. The final point I would make is already, as we always see with these monthly updates, the figures are out of date, and the reason they're out of date is because in between this being published, we have had the news from the autumn statement from government. I think you know, to put on record, there are a number of positives in there which have materially helped the financial situation of this council and others, particularly with reference to social care and greater flexibilities for councils as well. We always will push for more, and you know, we're looking forward to the government settlement for revenue support grants, which will come, I think, probably, we're now informed, late December. At that stage, we'll have the full financial picture of where we will be and some of the choices we can make on the budget. But already the table that is under section number 11, which talks about our medium-term financial position, which shows that we are only £11 million short over that extended period over 26-27, and you know, we've said this before, but we've never seen a position where, because of the graft that the entire organisation has put in, we've now got that gap down to such a low figure over the course of that extended period, notwithstanding a balanced budget for next year. That has already improved as a result of the announcements in the autumn statement as well, and we hope to bring that down further as we get more support from government and as we work collectively across the organisation to improve that position as well. So these are sobering times, but we've done a lot of work. We're working really closely with the community to provide services differently and to protect them and to find out what's most important to them. And I'd just like to congratulate everyone for their hard work in that endeavour.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Okay, so perhaps I can come now to Councillor Lawrence Williams. Lawrence is the chair of the Corporate Community Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and where this item was taken. And Lawrence says, again, thank you so much for facilitating these monthly meetings. It's been great. I know that's meant more work for your committee and more dates. It is appreciated, yours and your committee's flexibility with that. Again, a good debate and discussion, and I believe we have some recommendations as well. So perhaps over to you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Leader, and I appreciate the comments. You and officers responded to a number of issues raised in discussion, including the impact of the cost of living, inflationary pressures, and how this had been affected by the Chancellor's autumn budget statement, as you said earlier. There was more clarity on expected inflation and budget being updated to reflect this. The executive advised that information on auction houses and sales could be obtained. Other points of discussion was stakeholder consultation, comments on the external auditor, strategic assets, and you, Leader, advised that the strategic assets were considered sites of notable historic or public interest or a notable regeneration value, whether this included the Bournemouth Indoor Bowls Club, for instance. I proposed rather that the meeting agreed under exempt session that we go into exempt session, and during that part of the meeting, which you left actually, Leader, to as you felt conflicted, and following discussions and details within the exempt appendix A, the meeting resumed in public session. The committee did discuss a number of issues concerning proposed sale of assets, and opinions were expressed that the council should not be selling these assets at this time. A move was made and seconded that in relation to proposed sale of non-strategic assets, the committee requests that Cabinet approve the committee receive a long list of assets and the matrix against which they were tested, along with the next round of budget papers. During the debate on this alternative motion, an alternative motion was suggested, and the initial motion was withdrawn, and the committee considered the following motion, which was moved and seconded. And the motion is: the Corporate and Community Overview and Scrutiny Committee requests that the portfolio holder and relevant officers bring a report to the next Overview and Scrutiny meeting on the one, wider list of assets considered for disposal and the reasons for the selection of the shortlist. 2, the timetable for the controlled disposal of public assets, which maximises value and control risk. The voting was 6 in favour and 3 abstentions. A further motion was suggested to reflect the concerns that had been raised during the meeting, with recommendations set out at 4 in the report. And the following exempt discussions concerning Appendix A of the Finance Strategic Update Cabinet Report, the Corporate Community Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommend to the Cabinet that recommendation 4 is outlined in the report and is not approved, and that the Cabinet give further consideration to the list of non-strategic asset sales as set out in the exempt Appendix A, and that the Cabinet give further consideration to all other options. The voting there was 6 in favour and 3 abstentions. We had a lengthy meeting which ended at 20 to 6. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, and yeah, again, just appreciate the depth the committee went into. Okay, so what I'll probably do now is if I'll respond to the overview and scrutiny piece, and then welcome any other questions or comments from colleagues before we look to move to the vote. Yeah, so absolutely, I think there are 2 parts to the recommendation from ONS. You've got one part that says effectively that we should reconsider recommendation 4, and then you've got the part that talked about how we can engage with overview and scrutiny about looking at a wider list of assets considered and also timetable. The second part, in terms of engagement with overview and scrutiny, very happy to do that. I've got a suggestion later actually, which goes part of that way in terms of an extended budget cafe, but very happy to engage with the second part and bring those papers and discussions to the next relevant meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. My personal view is that we should go ahead with the recommendation 4 as put. There is a time scale, and we need to give clarity to our officer teams, and also particularly just for the technicality of any auction that would happen, that these assets for the council would have agreed to sell them at a certain price. We've taken the view that we want to explore selling some assets rather than using reserves and money that can be used in their revenue account, which was the policy of the Unity Alliance. By doing that, we've been able to have 2 council tax freezes across the last 2 years, already saving £11 million in council tax for our council tax payers. So we think that's the right answer. Looking to either dispose of some non-strategic assets or utilised for government's capitalisation system. The other thing we inherited was quite a varied array of assets that we're looking to be disposed of, and we've looked at those, and we believe that quite a lot of those assets are actually really quite strategic or really important either to communities or to our regeneration agenda. So the assets we've got in our confidential appendix now are effectively historic non-strategic assets that are investment for yield. The government have been quite clear that they don't want us to move forward towards more investment to yield, so it would be balancing our portfolio by moving some of those assets on, rather than, but by doing that we keep those strategic assets that we believe are going to be so important for the community, but also for regeneration needs as well. So the small number of assets, non-strategic assets, will actually get us there. If you look at the, I'd rather not go below the line, but if you look at the detail of the assets that we put forward, these are actually in areas that are performing really quite well in this environment. I won't go into any more detail than that, but it gives us real confidence. It's a good time to be able to look to dispose of those to those assets. So effectively, my issue, I'd much rather, and we made this point to government, when we tried through our original SPV system around beach huts, but we didn't want to sell any assets. I'd rather not. We've tried hard not to, but if we're going to sell any assets, we believe these are the right assets to sell. On my personal view is, we should be trying to keep assets that generate a yield for ourselves, but I've been able to get comfortable because of the scale of our regeneration and housing investment. Took forward a paper through full council, which gives us last full council, which gives us much more flexibility. We will be acquiring many more in assets that will deliver long-term returns for this council and for future generations. So I can get comfortable by the fact we've effectively had to move a couple of those assets on. We need to make a decision. I'd rather make a decision at the next full council meeting, so it's the right thing to do. That is a full council decision, effectively. So let's go and have that conversation and see where we get to with and make that case with full council. What part of the conversation around overview and scrutiny was around the process. How can we get comfortable that there wasn't going to be assets sold under value? Well, we've got clear valuations in the report, so under no circumstances would it be possible, after council has voted on this, for anybody to sell these assets for less than those values. And I also made it really clear in the meeting that we don't have to sell these assets if the valuations don't come in and valuations aren't met. Then we would look forward to move forward with the capitalisation direction. So there's very, very limited risk, and effectively zero risk of being able to sell these assets under the value they're stated in the paper. There's a detailed process about how those values have been arrived at, both in terms of our professional officers and in our estates team, but also external valuation as well. And I'm very happy, and we'll look to share some more of that information with full council colleagues as well as we build up to the full council meeting. So these are third-party external valuations. We will not be able to sell underneath them. By selling these assets or agreeing to sell these assets at that price, it enables us to keep the policies we've been doing around low council tax, and that's effectively why we're looking to use capitalisation or flexible use of capital receipts rather than sell it using our revenue budget. So I'm content. I've listened and appreciated the discussion and debate, but I'm content that we stay as put, and that we engage further with the full council and overview and scrutiny about the process and the comfort and the control. So that's my suggestion in terms of the overview and scrutiny comments. Apologies, that was quite long-winded, but it's quite a lot I wanted to talk about in that. Is there anything else anybody would like to comment on? Okay, go to Councillor Anderson first. Mark.
Thank you, Leader. All it is just to make a slight clarification on the operations section, which is on page 41 of the report. The cremation income has suffered since the COVID pandemic and has led to a 0.6 million pressure since 2023. That's not actually absolutely correct. Basically, what we have is we keep getting forwarded in the MTF a 0.6 million pressure which came out about the original 2019 budget for unrealistic income for the crematorium. And I know that this has been discussed within the Environment Service with finance to reduce it down. But I just thought we need to clarify that. The other point I would just say about the crematoriums, since the opening of the New Milton crematorium, we are suffering, as we suspected, from business moving in that direction. We are trying to do something about it, but there has been a reduction in our income through that.
Yes, great. And it's been a really fluid year, isn't it, in terms of income, and we're coming out of COVID and some of those assumptions getting tested again, and then the cost of living and stuff. What I'm really pleased with is the detailed work we've been able to do at this stage, which gets us to have real confidence over the numbers going forward. And I think that will pay dividends for us long term. But thank you for raising that. I'll now go to Councillor Jude Buck. Morning, Jude.
Thank you. Yes, I wasn't going to raise this, Mr. Chairman, but thank you. Councillor Anderson made a remark with regard to Poole Crematorium. I was just wondering, as he raised it, as to how much that was down to there being no cremators there, and as to how the business had fallen off because the cremators aren't there and people are going elsewhere. So I'd be grateful if you could answer that. But I'll go into my other two questions, if I may. The first one is with regard to the engagement process, which Councillor Broadhead raised, and it's obviously very welcomed. But with the cost of living crisis that our most vulnerable are facing, we are, I think, going to receive some extremely stark contributions, and we deserve to receive those from our public, which is very basic. And I really feel the council must be absolutely willing and prepared to use this data for tangible change, to our strategic, or the council's strategic direction of travel, and because the public must be confident that they take the trouble to engage with us. And the council must then use their contributions, I believe, proportionately, and give them proportionate weight to policy review and creation. So I think that's really important. I think the public need to have some confidence that that will happen. And the other matter is with regard to, you did touch on it, but I'll just, I think, state it again so that we can have clarification in this point. This is a question for you, Mr. Chairman. The process with regard to the disposal of the assets, it's the sort of, what have we done up until now, what's going to happen from now, and what will that journey look like? Because again, the public need to be really reassured in factual terms that best value is being attained, and also to understand the process that will be put in train. I believe we have to meet a March deadline, or if we don't meet the March deadline, then the capitalisation direction will be invoked. So hoping that engagement with all members can be put in train, and then all members, all 76 of us, can take that message out to all residents so they better understand that process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you very much for those questions. Just in terms, I'll just start from the beginning. In terms of the Poole Crematorium, we're really keen. I was really pleased that the work the Cabinet did. I believe it was 2 meetings ago when we've said we actually want, when we're very positive about a statement on we need to bring the Poole Crematorium back. Obviously, the service there would have changed because there isn't cremations available. We're really keen to bring it back, and we look to be able to do that. And we're looking for a report. I believe it was in 6 months from the Cabinet meeting was discussed. So thank you for raising it again. Your two questions specific to the paper again, and thank you in your role as engagement, both very much around engagement and also the process. So the first question, absolutely, the public consultation needs to be used. We're actually doing a stage of consultation that we don't normally do. 5 or 6 week detailed consultation where we're out asking the public. We're choosing to do that because we think it's absolutely fundamental that this council is a listening council, and that we put, and as I said actually in my speech when I became had the honour of being made the leader of this council, we're going to put residents at the heart of the council and members at the heart of the administration. That's what we've done. That's what we continue to do, and the fact that we put this extra layer of consultation forward, it speaks to that. You're absolutely right. What we now need to do is to make sure and show we've listened to that. So that consultation in itself goes up until, I believe, the 23rd of December. and then we will at pace, and we've had confirmation from our officer team that will be reviewed at pace, so that we will be able to in January look back at that consultation feedback and work it into our budget setting process, which needs to be landed by the end of January effectively. So completely agree with you, and I want to give the public absolute confidence. Please engage with the process. We're doing quite a number of consultations effectively, so there's a quantitative, but also we're looking to do some more qualitative work as well. So in whatever way or format to engage, please do that. You talked about process, but also about members and members' involvement. I'm very happy to spend some more time with members to talk through the process that is being planned around these assets, and I'll contemplate how best to do that. But we have brought forward all member seminars that might be worthwhile doing. We might be able to get that information out to councillors in another way, but I will do. And I think that highlighted from the overview and scrutiny meeting and the question you just raised, that's an important step, but we do that before we get to council in January. I just would also repeat that the process is really solid. So we have had third-party evaluations. Our professional officers, members will see in the confidential appendix the evaluations. There is no way we can get underneath those underneath those valuations so that it's robust. And we don't need to sell those assets because we have another option with capitalisation. So I think if we spend more time and with members understanding that, I think that's a good story. We will get to. One thing I'll flag this now is, and I was going to do it in my closing, but what I wanted to do, what we wanted to do, is to further enhance the member engagement in the budget. So this administration for the first time brought in a budget cafe, an all-member budget cafe, and we've done that for certainly the last 2 years. What we want to do now is, as we've taken feedback on it, and it's been positively received, but it would be more beneficial if we've got more information. So we're going to keep the budget cafe, which is pre our settlement agreement from government in December, and then we're going to set up a second budget cafe in more to allow members to go through the proposed budget in more detail, effectively in January. And provisional date of that is Wednesday the 25th. I'll ask Democratic Services colleagues, we're working with them at the moment to firm that up, but we're expecting to hold a second budget cafe for all member engagement on Wednesday the 25th, which I think will be really useful, because again, it's before the budget is announced, but we'll be able to get that feedback from all members, and it just shows the commitment. We're trying to share information with as many members who want to engage as possible. Just in that, we've discussed with Corporate Management Board, and there's very little update in terms of the January report, so we're not going to be bringing forward a report to the January Cabinet around the finance paper, but we will put all our efforts into delivering an all-member budget cafe session in January on the 25th probably. So again, I think that goes. It's been really useful to have those monthly reports, but we've effectively got to a balanced budget position now, and now it's about getting that member feedback across the board in some real detail, so that we can craft a budget that all members can support when it comes to it in February. So Jude, thank you for that. Apologies, I've talked at length again, but really appreciated the questions, and hope those answers are useful. Are there any other questions or comments from colleagues before we? I'll need to go to Democratic before we move to the vote, because there's been some suggested wording amendments which I'll ask Democratic to bring in. But before we get to that, on the paper as put, are there any other comments or questions? No. So perhaps before we vote, Sarah, if you could just read out the suggested amendments to the recommendations, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Yes, the proposed recommendations are as follows. It is recommended that Cabinet 1 supports the update of the plan to deliver a balanced budget for 2023-24 and the testing of the implementation process. 2, recognises the continued improvement to the in-year position with a surplus of 8.5 million now projected. 3, acknowledges that further proposals have been identified to replace any proposals that cannot now be delivered or which have been deferred into a future year. And then it is recommended that Council 4 approves the disposal of non-strategic asset sales as set out in Confidential Appendix A, subject to achieving the estimated sales value for each lot, with the decision delegated to the Director of Finance in consultation with the leader or deputy leader of the council as appropriate. And 5, approves a pooled budget arrangement in relation to section 117 aftercare as set out in Appendix B. Thank you.
Great. So just some tidying up of the recommendations there. That's really helpful. Thank you. So members, I'll move to the vote now. All those in favour, please show. That's great. Again, unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so apologies, it's me again, but hopefully we've got it's agenda item 7 is a mid-year corporate performance report. So an opportunity for a lot of us, because this cuts across all of our service areas, because what the corporate performance report is our priorities and values, and effectively underpins how we deliver and develop and deliver our services going forward. So in our corporate plan and our revised corporate plan, we put forward some effectively some performance targets we wanted to achieve across the board. We've been really positive. So there's some fantastic. Encourage any member to on cabinet or not to have fully read the report, because there's some real detail in here about where we are performing, where we are really achieving to our corporate plan. So a huge amount of work in what is a as ever challenging environment. So it just shows that I think, and we're now getting into the swing of it as a BCP Council. We've now in our in our 3rd year, so it can all the time our data is getting more relevant, and it's enabling us to report better across our performance. There are what we also do in the Appendix 1, we talk about the areas where there has been some deviation from our targets. It's not on all of them, but a lot of them it's to do with the external factors like the cost of living, or coming off the back of the pandemic effectively, but we're working with those, and even in those there's been some really good performance that has and mitigations effectively. So I think that's probably all I'll do in terms of introducing the report, but very happy to bring in other. First of all, actually I believe the Council Board Head, you're seconding the report.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Happy to second, and as you've highlighted, in difficult times, it's really heartening to see areas where the council is not just performing but overperforming, as well as the actions for those that are more challenging. I think your assertion is correct. A lot of the areas where we're not quite on target, such as, for instance, our house building programme, are down to the inflationary pressures. But as we'll see later on in this agenda, and also in further updates I'll be bringing forward on that housing, CNAS housing programme, we've got plans to keep that aspiration high, to re-gear and move around the programme to respond to those developments which are a little bit harder to now fulfil in the inflationary environment, and those which might be which were a little bit later on in the agenda, which we might be bringing forward. So we're always adapting and changing, and a reminder that the extent, for instance, of our house building of 1,000 homes, council delivered homes, we're talking about here council houses, affordable homes, social rent, private rented sector, is to a level that we've never seen before, and we are still very much on track with all of those. A couple of other points that I would draw out is the exceptional work that's taken place within the planning team, which is now really ably led by Councillor Bobby Dove. 2 years ago we put forward a planning improvement programme. We inherited from the previous administration a planning service which frankly was almost falling over. We're nearly at the stage of being in special measures, working really closely with the directors of planning and the chief executive on that planning improvement board. We've now got to a stage where at the last meeting of the planning improvement board, we're feeling confident that we might not even need the planning improvement board anymore, and that is indeed borne out in some of these figures here, which show that we are now ahead of our own targets, which are already aspirational compared to some of the others. So a really interesting report, some really some stats in there which are sometimes quite surprising. You know, we had what we thought were quite big aspirations about getting people moving around differently to try and ease some of the congestion issues in the area, whilst we continue to invest in our road programme as well, so that your travel, your choice. If you have to drive, let's make the roads better, but to improve congestion, let's make it easier for people to get around differently. You can see in the stats that we've almost doubled our target for the number of people that are now using our bike and e-scooter share scheme, which is, you know, really exciting and has a real impact on those that do need to get around by car as well. So a lot of good work in here, and pleased to see that we are absolutely getting to grips with those areas that have been really affected by the cost of living situation.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. Okay, so let's open this up to the membership. Anybody would like to come in on comment? Councillor White's mic.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to make a couple of comments on the Brighter Futures theme, which is basically about children and young people. This was scrutinised in a lot of detail last night at the Children's ONS. Just highlight the fact there are many positives in the report. If I highlight just a couple of them, there is real progress on getting additional special places in schools. Sorry, capacity for special school places. And the other thing I'd highlight is continuingly, we have a really high percentage of our children who are attending good or outstanding schools. Of concern is the percent of repeat referrals to children's social care. You can see in the report there are about 7 or 8 actions identified, many of which are to do with further staff training. Thank you.
Great, and it's really encouraging to hear some of that direction of travel as a real priority for us. Thank you. I've got Councillor Kelly Jane and then Councillor Anderson.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yeah, I'd like to pick out a few things from this report that show our great achievements by our community development team. Absolutely brilliant team they are, bringing resilience to our communities in a really difficult and challenging time. For instance, we've morphed our Together We Can, that was referenced earlier, into a winter resilience team, and we've got a multi-agency partnership addressing the cost of living crisis at the moment, and helping our communities to manage their way through those. Also, it's mentioned the Kinston Community Centre has been brought back in-house and is so successful in serving the local community in that area. Also, we've put in action our year 1 actions that were mentioned in the voluntary and community sector strategy. So we've got a new volunteering coordinator in post as well. So there's lots of things going on under that Connected Communities and Fulfilled Lives banners to help our communities manage at the moment. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for that. Really encouraging. Councillor Anderson, Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to thank the residents for the work they've been doing on the waste recycling. We are a high achieving council with 3rd overall for the percentage of total household waste recycled, reused and composted, but we want to try and get this higher. So we're going to be running a communications programme, PR programme, to try and explain to people what actually needs to go in the recycling bin. There's been a slight change in the figures where the government has removed wood from this area. But overall, we are doing very well as a council, and I want to see us trying to improve our figures even better.
Great, thank you very much. I've got Councillor Johnson to come in next. Toby. Thank you, Leader. It was just to point out, I think it's really good to see that the levelling up is mentioned both in the cover of this report and within. I think it shows just how much as an administration and as a council we've wired levelling up into our decision making and our thoughts and our thought processes. Given that we've had to fight to get ourselves recognised as a South Coast Council, we do have problems. It's really good to see that it's really wired into our corporate thinking now. Thank you. Yeah, great, and we wouldn't be where we are without your leadership on it as well, Toby. So thank you very much for doing that, and I appreciate we're now getting a national sort of recognition for that work. So well done. Okay, I come to Councillor Jude.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whilst there's an awful lot of good in this, there are also a few bits and bobs which do need some attention. And I note on page 12, with regard to connected communities, I'm disappointed to still see that the development of a library strategy has been postponed. until the initial work on the development and implementation of customer target operating module has been completed. I wonder whether that could be unpicked and actually tell me what that actually means so the public would better understand it. And the monitoring required with regard to the development of a youth strategy is unlikely to be completed until October 2022. Youth being vital, we all understand that, and the application to provide for them really important. So just wondering what is stopping those two things, and can we expedite them, and what's the expectation of doing that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councillor Butt. I mean, I'll come in generality, and if any other members want to come in, please feel welcome. I should have actually mentioned our portfolio holder for libraries also gave her apologies today, Bev Dunlop, so we'll have to add those to the minutes. I mean, we have, and actually that's an interesting point in itself. So we have made a change in terms of our portfolio holder, the person who's been leading libraries for the last couple of years of this administration. We've changed, and we've now got Bev doing that. So Bev's really picked up a pace and is really improving the level of engagement we're delivering at libraries on that than we were. In terms of the youth strategy, we're actually it's been really quite an interesting part and a potential positive of the cost of living pressures and the work we've been doing over this summer, because we're now actually looking at the youth service in general, about how we can support and become more of an enabling council, how we can go further and provide capital assets or capital injections and allow clubs and volunteer groups to then do more effectively. So I think we're effectively we're changing our ethos around that, and with an ambition to go much further. In terms of the specific timescales around the strategy, I don't have them to hand, but I do know what the work that's going behind the scenes is, effectively trying to take that whole piece of work and our engagement strategy further. And we wouldn't have necessarily been doing that work in a level of detail we are if we hadn't started earlier on our cost of living. So there's an element there, necessity breeds invention, and I believe, my belief and is that the youth service in itself is going to be something that really benefits from that work. What I can do, though, Jude, is I will make sure we get email updates to you on the technical questions around the time frames for both those strategies. Okay, so now I've got, I believe Councillor Dove indicated. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, and I'm just referring to the exception report on page 65, where it talks about the actions under Cleaner, Greener, Safer programme. I have to say I'm extremely proud and privileged to be the portfolio holder to oversee this. I've just been speaking to our Chief Operations Officer, Jess Gibbons, prior to this meeting, and we really must stress how hard-working that team are and the deliverables that they're bringing about. The collaborative work between the community safety team, which includes our CSAS officers, youth engagement officers and the ASB team, has been simply phenomenal during some very difficult times. And as we're trying to adapt to this post-COVID world, the positive outcomes have been really tangible and have started to make a real difference for people's lives. And I think one of the examples of this was an email that came across my desk yesterday. And this was after we had a partial closure order on a property in September. There was incredible engagement with the community, and there were also then a number of breaches that they helped provide the evidence for. It went to court yesterday, and we had a district judge from London hearing that case, and he told our officers how impressed he was with that case being laid out, the content of that pack, the argument and the professional witnesses who gave their evidence. And he also said that in London he's not used to such a good approach and evidence being provided in the manner that it was. And I'm really pleased to say that the ASB officer and the local police officer had been at the property yesterday, oversaw the tenant removing their belongings. Locks have been changed and the property's now been left secured, with the landlord taking action and evicting the tenant. So this is all the really hard work that perhaps our residents don't see, but really make a difference in that community. In terms of the points that Councillor Jude Butt raised, I just really wanted to provide that reassurance that within the Community Safety Partnership paper that has already come to Cabinet and is going to Council, there is a huge amount of work being going on with our youth groups, in particularly around community safety. And the headlines from that is that the strategic assessment that we've carried out shows a reduction in police recorded crime and a downward trend in violent crime. The multi-agency seasonal response during the summer has resulted in a reduction in ASB in Lower Gardens and surrounding areas of 23.64%, which we know was predominantly youth driven previously. But even more sort of exciting and really positive is that there's a reduction in the number of young people entering the criminal justice system for the first time. And I have to say that that's not come about easily, and it's required so much work, collaborative work across all of the teams. The focused work in and around the Poole bus station, which supports our vulnerable young people. And this includes intelligence sharing, direct youth work with transport, police, the youth offending teams, ASB teams, the children's team. So I'm really, really pleased to see that we're on target. It's a really, really good report that's come forward. And if it's okay, I'd like to place on record my thanks to the officers who've worked really hard to bring this about. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we'd all absolutely endorse that as well. And you know, across the safety, we talk about cleaner, greener, safer, but across the safety perspective, I think we've had some real, you know, wins and some things have really moved forward. So thank you for that. And it's, you know, it's been great to do that alongside the new Police and Crime Commissioner David Sidwick. I think we've really appreciated, you know, our teams and working with his teams, and we're combined in what we're trying to achieve, which is great. So absolutely agree with you. Perhaps I could come now to Councillor Hazel. Hazel, morning.
Morning, thank you, Leader. I just wanted to back up what my colleague Councillor Dove has just said about this amazing work, and I think it's about the partnership working with wide partners to really focus down on how we can improve street-based antisocial behaviour, and it's having those clear plans in place and everybody pulling in the same direction. And you know, we set about a challenge to partners to say we really want to tackle ASB in a good, timely manner with some good, clear guidance and timelines, evidence gathering, and we're having partners help us with that really quality evidence gathering. And I think it just shows that if we're being complimented on the information we are putting forward when we're asking for orders, that just shows that everyone's putting together. And I just think it's just really excellent work, and that's backed up by the wider partnership supporting those that are vulnerable, offering support. So we've got a really good balance of engagement and enforcement now, and I think that that's real testament to the work of those teams and the work of our portfolio holder. So I just wanted to say just excellent work and thank you.
Great, thank you very much for that. Okay, that's been really helpful. Do any other members wish to come in on that? So no, I think we've certainly looked at the recommendations as put and considered the performance and the exceptions and updated the new style of report as well. So as all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Again, it's unanimous. Great. Okay, so now we move away from me, which will be a relief to everybody, onto item 8, which is flexible housing scheme at Summers Avenue, Bournemouth. Councillor Broadhead.
Yeah, well, what we take away from one hand, you give with the other, Chairman. Thank you very much. I referenced this report earlier on in the agenda today. As colleagues will note, we have a super ambitious council house building programme, which we call CNAS, which is designed and put together by ourselves to go further than ever before with the direct delivery of council homes. We targeted 1,000 new homes over the course of that programme. We've now extended that, and we're on course for much more than that. So I'm really pleased with the way that the programme is going, but also the structure of the programme, which is you know, very well structured and puts a focus onto lots of different parts of the programme to make sure that we're covering not just an array of different tenures, but that we're not missing any opportunity to provide the local homes for local people that this area so sincerely needs. As part of that programme, we tend to bring forward a batch of different projects together, but where that's not possible, we will bring individual ones forward, and this is one of the individual parts of the programme drawn from programme 5 within the CNAS, which are those sites that are hardest to reach. We have some of our existing properties which present ongoing significant maintenance issues for BCP Council. So we've taken that opportunity where those maintenance issues are there to look at whether it is actually better just to rebuild them, and whilst doing so increase the provision for those homes as well. This is one of those. It presents an opportunity for redevelopment and the building of a replacement, but actually with more bedrooms, better quality, sustainable, affordable and flexible homes. And in particular, this is really catering to those that have very specific needs. So these new homes will provide two-bed wheelchair properties, which will cater for those needs. Planning permission was granted on the 20th of September. What I would note, actually, and again, a testament to the team, this is in one of those areas where there's a heathland designation, which means that it's not possible to go further normally, or in terms of adding more bedrooms, or we can't just knock this one down and build a tremendous amount more properties. But it has been agreed with the planning department to go from 1 to 2 beds in this location. I think in recognition in particular of the fact that this will bring a much higher quality offer to what is a variety of needs that we have to address. So it's not one of the big ones, but I wouldn't miss the opportunity without saying that that we are on track despite the inflationary environment to keep going on our house building programme. I look forward to bringing forward a paper perhaps in the next couple of months that will talk about some of the changes to that programme, where we're looking at some of the projects and figuring out which ones of those might be a little bit harder to deliver with the cost price environment of materials, and which ones that maybe we're a little bit further on in the programme that we can bring forward to make sure that despite those tough times, we're absolutely keeping up on the pace of delivering homes, which are so needed by very many people. The Chairman, happy to move the recommendations, which is to approve the budget for these new homes on Somers Avenue, which I think will really raise the quality of this of properties which are very much in need. Thank you, Chairman.
Great, thank you very much for that. And I believe Councillor Rampton, you're seconding this housing scheme. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really happy to second this. It may be a very small redevelopment, but it's absolutely vital because it's providing two-bedroom properties for people who use wheelchairs, and I'm glad that our adult social care officers are working with housing colleagues to ensure that we have the appropriate tenants in there at these fabulous properties built to the principles of Passive House, and I'm sure there'll be a waiting list for these properties and for any more that we can bring forward at these affordable rents. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much both. So let's see. Do any other members of council wish to, or cabinet want to speak on this? No, not seeing that. So I do have Councillor Butt, Jude.
Thank you. Yes, it's a very quick one. Whilst it's always good to see Passive House being adopted and that standard to be applied, we big question about climate change and what's the best way forward with regard to alternative energy, although it's not so much an alternative now as it's what we're going to have to do in the future. But I may have read the report wrong, but there's to be no solar power involved. And with the massive and urgent issues that sit around the climate change agenda, surely this is known to be a priority method of provision, but it's not utilised here. And as you say, it's a small development, but every little helps. So I was wondering why I believe that surely as BCP Council we should be adopting these methods, and solar power being something which is so very much in people's minds, and just wondered why we weren't doing that here and why we were preferring Passive House, although of course Passive House has its own benefits. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So any other people coming in? If not, I'll come back to Councillor Broadhead to sum up. Phil?
Thank you very much, and thank you for that question. We're absolutely committed to our environmental and climate change standards. Passive House in and of itself is a way to judge how eco-friendly and how well insulated homes are. So it doesn't necessarily preclude solar. But what you often find with these much smaller developments is that because they're so well insulated, because you've got a low heating, carbon heating requirements, and we use all sorts of different methods. I think this one's got the off gas heating system. The actual the benefit of solar panels there are just probably not needed because the energy requirements are so very low. You get much better bang for your buck where you have slightly larger developments, and absolutely solar is one of those areas that we're looking not just to keep investing within our council house stock, but also, you know, across BCP as we move towards our declaration of being you know, carbon neutral and beyond. So we'll absolutely be doing solar where it's appropriate. There is a wider point, Chairman, which I think Councillor Butt touches on, which is that really delicate balance of making sure that our eco credentials are top notch, but that we're not sometimes cutting off our nose to spite our face. Although in this cost of living situation, making sure that our homes are as eco-friendly as possible is more critical than ever, particularly as families struggle with bills. We also have to make sure that we keep delivering the council homes that people need. So we're not slavishly following passive house standards across all of the developments that we do. I've given a firm direction to the team that we want that really fine line combination of being as eco-friendly as possible, but not hitting the viability so much that we can't keep on delivering things. We've got an absolutely brilliant team that I'm sure can strike that balance correctly, and I think this is another good example of in very difficult times we're getting on delivering homes that, as Councillor Rampton said, are so well needed for some of our most vulnerable, and yet have those really high standards at the same time.
Absolutely, great. So thank you very much for that. Okay, let's move back to the vote then. Please, all those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's great. That moves us on to agenda item 9, which is the housing and property compliance update, housing revenue account. Councillor Upton again, Karen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm really pleased to present this report, and this demonstrates how Council ensures our housing stock within the HRA, that's a housing revenue account, is managed and is compliant with health and safety, with regulatory and of course with best practice. And this information gives us information up to the end of Q2. So Cabinet members will be aware that the 6 highest risk areas of compliance which are measured and monitored are water quality, gas safety, electric safety, asbestos, fire safety and lift safety. There was a recent internal audit of the Bournemouth neighbourhood which found a reasonable level of assurance, but only partial for general compliance and for lifts, and partial assurance was provided overall. The Pool neighbourhood wasn't included in the audit because it was audited by what was then Pool Housing Partnership for the period January to June 2022, and no issues raised. But I'd just like to assure Cabinet that in future audits will be carried out collectively across our HRA. So going back to the Bournemouth neighbourhood, there are multiple system and record keeping arrangements, and some information about properties was fragmented, so it wasn't possible to give assurance that records are entirely complete. Some procurement arrangements were in breach of financial regulations, for example, where waivers and extensions were no waivers or extensions were put in place when the contracts expired, and recording for lifts are incomplete and inaccurate and do not demonstrate compliance. I want to ensure Cabinet that there is an action plan to address the issues with the record keeping and information. There's a new requirement, smoke and carbon monoxide alarm, which requires Council to fit carbon monoxide alarms to all homes by the 1st of October 2022. And the Council has written to the regulator of social housing, as not all our properties are compliant. The regulator obviously expects plans to be put in place to ensure compliance, and we've informed them that our programme to fit alarms had already commenced, and by February next year all properties will be compliant. So the regulator has confirmed that it's satisfied with our plans and has not found any breach of regulatory standards. There's good progress being made on dealing with the backlog of electrical safety tests and fire risk remedial actions in the Bournemouth neighbourhood. And Cabinet members will recall that last year we found over 780 domestic and communal properties had an overdue electrical inspection. This has been significantly reduced, and I really want to thank officers for the enormous amount of work that's been put in to achieve this. Because at the 3rd of November, 98.33% of all HRA properties in Bournemouth had an up-to-date electrical inspection, 88 outstanding, 6 for communal areas and the rest were domestic.
but work orders have been raised and appointments have been made. And there are procedures in place where tenants are reluctant or refusing to provide access. There are 14 properties where inspection is over 10 years old, and efforts are being made to secure that access, either through support to residents who may have issues such as hoarding or mental health issues, or by taking legal action. And we're making additional unannounced visits to these properties by electrical contractors to gain access. Outstanding fire risk assessment remedial actions have been reduced since the end of September. Work orders raised for many outstanding actions, or they've been placed on improvement programmes. As of the 3rd of November, there were 8 medium risk and 25 low risk items outstanding, and there's 1 outstanding high risk action, and that's regarding a stair lift for a very elderly resident. A copy of the audit report on compliance was provided to the housing regulator. They've noted the contents of the audit, and they have responded to us to say they're satisfied there's been no breach of regulatory standards. Our performance on gas testing and asbestos survey is good. Our water safety testing, there were 2 communal supplies not tested, but no remedial actions outstanding. We've had difficulty gaining access to properties to carry out inspections. 23 properties have been difficult, but 11 have since been completed, appointments made for 6, and there are ongoing efforts to secure access to the remaining 6. And we won't give up, we'll keep going until we do get the access. Building safety, we continue to plan for our additional responsibilities, which are coming into place. We've got new national tenant satisfaction measures which will be introduced from next April, and they will include new ways to measure compliance. Locally, our Housing Advisory Board has been set up and it's had its first meeting. We are also setting up a residents committee, and there'll be a panel which looks at home safety and energy. The Housing Advisory Board will give a strong focused lens on compliance, as this will be a regular agenda item, and the meetings are every 6 weeks. So there won't just be an annual report on compliance. There will also be that extra, belt and braces approach to it. And finally, Chair, I just wanted to comment that following the tragic death of Awa Bishak in Rochdale, I've asked Jess Gibbons, our Chief Operating Officer, to set up a strategic liaison group to monitor how we're supporting residents to have warm, safe and mould-free properties, and regular updates will be provided to the Housing Advisory Board and of course to Cabinet should they wish. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, great. I mean, what a suite of movement there, which is great. I'm really pleased on your last remark as well. So that's great. Perhaps I come to Councillor Jane Kelly, who is seconding. Jane.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I'm really pleased to second this report. And this it's a compliance update. Yes, very comprehensive. Since the Poole and Bournemouth housing departments have been brought together as BCP Homes. A really good advisory board, which Karen has kindly invited me to sit on, and I'm really pleased to do that. Absolutely wide range of people are sitting on there, from housing backgrounds, representing a wealth of experience and expertise, and they're all really keen to assist us in ensuring the health and well-being of the residents of our properties. And as well as that, there is a really effective resident committee to make sure that the community voice is heard as well. So that's really want to second that. Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other colleagues showing. Perhaps I could bring in Councillor Butt-Hughes.
Yes, sorry, me again. Lots of questions today because there's so much happening. On page 163 of the report at 5, it talks about ensuring that residents have a voice. We've just heard something about it from Councillor Kelly and a bit from Councillor Rampton, but I wanted to enlarge on it. It was to ensure that residents have a voice in how BCP Homes is run. There's a new resident engagement structure which is being implemented, and the board's been set up, etc. It says this will include a residents committee who consider strategic issues, including compliance, but also a customer panel, the home safety and energy panel, to discuss more operational issues. Now, I would like to have some confidence, please, please tell me that this differs radically from the previous models of engagement of Bournemouth Housing and PHP, the legacy housing providers, which to an extent suffered inconsistencies and some forward direction planning and a very complex reporting structure for our housing residents. So what I want to hear is that it's been simplified, that people have a clear understanding of what's going on and can feel very much part of it, can definitely contribute into it at all levels. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. So just checking, we've got any other colleagues wanted to come in before I come to Councillor Rampton to sum up. And just actually before I do that, I think one of the things we did do when we put PHP and the Bournemouth Housing Stock together and created this new model was very much about it was best of both, you know, and to go further and to be more ambitious. So we had some real strengths, and I know certainly the tenants in PHP really thought the consultation and how that was done, you know, and that their connection to PHP was really strong. So what we've tried to do, you know, certainly with ambition. And we were helped also through this with Councillor Bagwell, who's strong in the space as well, has enabled us to really, you know, use that as a benchmark and move forward. So the ambition here has been to do the best of both. But perhaps in that context, Karen, you could come in and sum up. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Buck, for your question. And I just want to absolutely assure you that the whole process of bringing the two neighbourhoods together into BCP homes has been co-designed with residents at every stage. And actually, there's still a joint resident committee, which is actually tomorrow evening. And maybe you're free, Judes, if you are free, love you to come along and meet with the residents and have a chat to them and see what they think of the process so far. As I say, the residents committee is being formed, and we have 4 panels as well where people will feed into. You know, there'll be a standalone scrutiny panel, so any areas where residents feel things aren't quite right, they will be able to feed into that committee, and all of that information will be fed up to the Housing Advisory Board, which is very much taking the approach that if there's some tweaking to be done, which inevitably, you know, it's a completely new and different structure, it's been done in a very different way, any tweaking can be done after, say, 9 months, and if something isn't right, then we'll change it, we'll fix it. But residents are absolutely at the heart of everything that we're doing. And I'd love you to come along and to meet some and to have a chat if you're able, and happy to do so. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. So moving to the vote then, please, all those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is again unanimous. Great, thank you. So let's move to the agenda item 10. Again, a really interesting paper about how we're trying to move forward in the safety area as well. So in that, I'll come to up you. It's Councillor Duff first, and then Councillor Anderson seconding. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, and please forgive me for going on so long. I'm going to approach this with 3 sort of main streams. The first is how the pilot has gone, the model moving forward, and then also the littering part. And I'd like to start by thanking my partner in crime, who's been incredible support to me, Councillor Mark Anderson, and also Matt King, our officer, who I have to say, I have no words for how fantastic he has been assisting with all of this. So this report has been written following the fly tipping and fly posting paper, which originally came to Cabinet in 2021. And this spring we asked for a continuation of that pilot so that we could look at an entire year's data and we could make a full evaluation of the scheme, could properly understand it, especially in terms of results, and whether this was a proportionate route to take to benefit our residents. We also wanted to introduce potential improvements, especially around education and communication, to deter fly tippings in the first instance. I felt it was important within that review that we remained open to all enforcement models, which included looking at practices of local neighbouring authorities, and those were being included in the paper. And then we felt upon assessment of those other options that actually this was the best current model in terms of delivering both on service but also for value for money. Our assessment showed that all complaints and reports relating to fly tipping and fly posting had been responded to during this pilot and at no cost to the taxpayer. In terms of the communication strategy, we started Your Waste, Your Duty, and report highlights how, where and with whom we have engaged. The campaign promotes the personal responsibility of residents and businesses and also raises the awareness of consequences of illegal disposal in our area. Other measures of success have considered the number of engagements we've had And against this, the low number of complaints that have been reported to us over the past year, out of the many thousands of engagements, only 12 cases have been escalated to the Environment Protection Manager for review. One of these complaints was upheld, one was partially upheld, and the others were not. In all of these cases, the conduct and professional standards of the officers have been exceptional. It's important to remember that professional standards will be maintained at all times as part of this procurement process. The contractor will be required to adhere to BCP Council's Code of Conduct, and the officers will wear uniforms and body-worn cameras. The body-worn footage will be available to be dip sampled or viewed upon a complaint being investigated. So I think it would be safe to say, therefore, Leader, that the pilot has been a success. We've had really positive feedback to reflect on from our waste services environmental health colleagues, as well as residents, local businesses. And I should also mention councillors too, who have written to say that they found the service really has met the needs of their residents and supported them in their role as councillor. So the report considers the pilot and outlines the options and proposals that's been completed. And the outcome of this is that we're proposing to continue to contract with an external provider for fly tipping and fly posting. But we're looking to extend this to include litter enforcement, given the positive outcomes that this pilot has demonstrated. So I know that many people will consider littering as low level, low harm activities, but the cumulative impact upon our environment is significant. One crisp packet, for example, can take up to 80 years to degrade, and even longer if protected from the elements, such as if they're caught under bushes or hidden in undergrowth. Microplastics are also being excreted into our drains, which can enter watercourses. And there is more information in the report. But let's be clear, littering is an activity that we need to be actively discouraging and enforcing against. We did find that littering was an issue for BCP over the summer, and it was noted as a challenge in our review of the summer response programme. And it can ruin the enjoyment of residents and visitors who want to visit our towns, beaches and open areas. But it also costs a considerable amount of time and money to clear and to remove. So therefore, we have proposed that the fines will be set at £150, which is reduced to £75 if paid within 14 working days. I have to be clear that this is not an income generating activity. Any sums returned to us will be solely supported to support legal actions such as instances of non-payment of fines, communication and signage. So the report outlines the intended approach, which will be to tender for a contractor to undertake enforcement across fly tipping, fly posting and littering. This will expand the scope of the approach and proactively tackle an extended portfolio of environmental crime. And including littering within the scope of the contract will allow for positive and robust enforcement. When coupled with a strong communication and engagement strategy, it provides the opportunity to prevent and deter this behaviour and to protect our environment for all of our residents, businesses and those who wish to visit our beautiful area. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. And absolutely worth going into detail. It's such an important aspect that we absolutely need to get right. Thank you very much. I'll bring in Councillor Mark Anderson now, Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. It's quite a difficult comment to respond to. I think that Councillor Dove has done a fantastic job of pushing this forward. I also think that I should thank the officers, because without their work, certainly we wouldn't have got anywhere near where we are. But I'd also like to thank Councillor May Haynes. Councillor May Haynes is the person I worked with originally on this, and again, without her hard work, I don't seem to have done any hard work on this at all. It's always been the ladies who have done all the work on this, so thank you to both of them. But we got the pilot set up, and we got it started, and we discovered from the pilot that there have been quite significant increases in the cleanliness around the town, particularly where we have spoken to a lot of the commercial organisations who haven't realised that they have a duty of care for waste, and that we have explained that to them, and they have all come out and taken out contracts with the various commercial waste companies, some of which have come to ourselves, which is good, but they have all realised that they have to clear up the area around their shops. And particularly if you look around Charminster, in your ward, Leader, there has been a significant improvement on the waste that's left on the ground, etc. And I think people around the council, the conurbation, are also realising that if they report any fly tipping on the council's website and the report it page, that the waste will be collected and it will be cleared. So I think it's really good, and I'm really pleased to see us going to a full-scale contract. So I second this, and I hope everyone else will support it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just a bit, as a ward councillor, we've had a lot of feedback about that and the positive benefits it's received. So I'm really grateful to you, and I'm sure other members, in the individual wards will be as well. So thank you. This item did go to the place overview and scrutiny committee meeting. So I'll wait for Councillor Gabriel to come and join online. Before we do that, I'll go to our list, and the first person I got on it is Councillor Broadhead, Phil.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. And I just really want to continue with the theme of congratulating everybody for their really hard work on this. This is an absolutely critical and really important part. It's unacceptable, some of the situations that we've seen, and it was really pleasing in section 12 of the report to see that figure, 2,271 investigations carried out over the last year, and also really pleasing to see that this is now going to be expanded to littering as well. I think it's really welcome. I think we've got to be really clear. Fly tipping and littering is absolutely unacceptable. It's irresponsible, and we won't stand for it. And I think the success of this pilot is proof of that, and I'm really pleased that we're now enhancing and expanding it as well. The slogan that we went with, your waste, your duty, is absolutely apt. And my view is that if you don't do your duty, then this will be the response. So it's no nonsense, and it's absolutely brilliant to see what we're doing. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely great. Thank you so much. Councillor Johnson, Toby.
Thank you, Leader. Just to echo the positive comments that have been made recently, but I think that members here would like to maybe know a bit more in a few months about the procurement process and the company themselves. So, Councillor Dove, would you be looking to bring a paper back in March or sometime in the new year to tell us a little bit more?
Thank you. And please carry on, Councillor. Actually, what I'll do, I'll come to Councillor Butt, and I'll leave you to sum up, Councillor Duff. Jude. Yeah.
Thank you again. Excellent report. Very pleased to see the work of WISE. The fly tipping report is very much a process dealing with the perpetrators of fly tipping, and we now got littering in there as well. And the main factors are stated at ease, reward and risk. But I was just wondering, the engagement, and it is all about engagement for me, so please excuse me, but what engagement can be done to ascertain why people are fly tipping? Because we're not looking behind it, we're looking at the resolutions, but are we looking at the reasoning? And the the judgment is it's ease, reward and risk, but there must be a lot more to it than that, because we surely need to know not just accept that textbook reasoning. I mean, if there's a trend panning out, and this is most probable the case as we're looking at the cost of living crisis, and we're looking at people, for instance, I looked online and the cost of getting rid of a tyre with BCP is £9.50. The cost of getting rid of a tyre in Dorset is £5. Now, there must be some a set cost of getting rid of a tyre, and I just wondered why it was £4.50 more for BCP than it was for another council. I'm sure there's a reason in it, but it's public perception. And this is why I had 15 tyres in my ward of late, which I had to get rid of, and Waste were very good and did deal with them. But why are people doing this? How can we engage and ask people why? Even those naughty people who might just be doing it, perhaps they'll tell us why, and then perhaps we can have a better gauge of what we can do to mitigate that. Also, on fly tipping, if you go on report it, it tells you how to report it, which is brilliant. But there's no expo at the moment as to why isn't its work, unless it's somewhere else. And public engagement here could be key in informing perhaps some warning of the sanctions, especially now we're bringing littering up to the fore. And the last one was my concern, obviously, and everybody's concern about the dropped waste and the significant adverse effect it has on our environment. So finding out why people are doing this and trying to put some of those mitigations in place, I think would be key. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you very much. Just a quick point on the fee charging piece. I'm just taking it from the finance perspective before I ask Councillor Duff to come in, and I'm not sure the specificity of this, but we are looking across the council, and we put it in the earlier report about full cost recovery of all of our fees and charges, and the principle of that, and that may be where we have some fees that are different to comparator authorities, and the overriding principle of that is if people need to use a service we need to be charging them what it costs us, and then if it's a service where we need to put inflationary rises on, we do that so that not everybody paying council tax subsidises it. So I just think there might be some of that about full cost recovery that will come into there going forward as well, and I think that's actually a good thing. Perhaps actually I could come into Councillor Anderson first, and then to you, Councillor Dove, sum up. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. There are very few items which you actually charge for at the Household Waste Recycling Centre. It's basically to do with sort of commercial type issues. So it's soil, hardcore and rubble, asbestos, plasterboard, tyres as we mentioned, gas cylinders and fire extinguishers, and that's it. Yeah, very, very few. Most items you can take there and we'll take it free of charge. So there's no compunction on people to dump stuff on the roads. It's more that they think they can get away with it. I think that's the bottom line. It's not to do with charges. It's because they think they can get away with leaving it there, and that's the education part of this work that we need to do.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you very much, both. And perhaps I'll come back to Councillor Dove to...
Mr Chairman, sorry, could I just come back with a supplementary on that? Sorry, I'm afraid I disagree with Councillor Anderson, because although I agree that the charging of most of those things for waste disposal are more commercial, if somebody doesn't want to use petrol to take it to the waste dump or something or other like that, or wants to get rid of it in a different way because of petrol costs, then that is having an effect on the cost of living. And I think we need to be absolutely open and look at the minutiae of detail as to why people are doing this, and it isn't just because they can't be bothered. So I really think I'd like to have a direct consideration of that, because there will always be mitigating factors for people, which of course it is illegal, but in their eyes they can't afford to do it because they can't afford the petrol or whatever it might be. I think that does need to be considered. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it will be. I think just the point that's been raised by other colleagues here, which I think we just want to underline, is it's nobody has the right to flight it, and whatever the circumstances are, they don't have that right. And what we're doing through the work of, you're quite right to mention Councillor May Haynes, but it's been led on by yourself and Councillor Dove now. We're making a clear statement that it's not acceptable, and we're going to really try and raise the bar here, because we think cleaner, green and safer matters. People have an expectation that they can live in places. I'm sure we've all done it. Litter picks and have a range of vans of drop stuff to be collected before. It's not acceptable, and this is administration isn't going to stand for it. Councillor Dove, perhaps you could sum up. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there is a waste strategy paper that's being written and devised, and no doubt will come to Cabinet, and we can discuss those wider issues then. What I have to say is, if you've got a person dropping 15 tyres, that's not the man on the corner who's changing a tyre and doesn't have the petrol cost to go to a refuse area. That is a business who has decided to dispose of 15 tyres illegally, and that, quite frankly, is abhorrent. We have a duty also to support our businesses who are acting lawfully and have incurred these costs in order to have a waste sort of license to be able to dispose of that. So I think there's a degree of equity in ensuring that we are supporting those that are going about their business in a lawful manner, and we will continue to support those by ensuring that we enforce wherever we can those that are choosing to make a really cheap buck, and that, quite frankly, is not the kind of council that we want to be. In terms of littering and why people do it, we were all being brought up on the Keep Britain Tidy campaign. There is no reason for it, and again, I would be really quite firm in terms of it's a really selfish behaviour. We don't walk around our own homes throwing things down expecting someone to come up behind them and clean up after them, and I certainly don't expect to see that on the streets of our towns. So yes, the waste strategy paper is coming forward, and no doubt part of that will be in terms of effectiveness of and barriers to using our refuse tips. I think I've answered those points. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you very much for that. Okay, really pleased to be tabling this, and thank you for the work in it. All those in favour, please show. That's great. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. So now we move on to agenda item 11, which is urgent decisions taken by the Chief Executive, which I believe there are none. Yeah, great, thank you. So then moves us to agenda item 12, which is the Cabinet Forward Plan, which has been updated and is available online. Any members wishing to come in or comment on the forward plan? Councillor Broadhead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's good to see that we've got an action-packed forward plan, but of course there are other areas that we may wish to add further items on in the future as well. Particularly, I'm particularly pleased to see that we will be shortly bringing forward some of the results of the work that Future Places have been doing around a number of our regeneration sites. We've been working really hard with the community and with businesses to bring forward some outline business cases, particularly around some of our civic centres, and a bright new future for those, which I think will be really pleased, really exciting, and show the utility of their work. I think it's also worth noting, and that I might be working with the team just to look at that continued focus of some of our high streets across BCP. We are now in challenging times again, and we've been doing again a number of pieces of work, particularly on areas like, for instance, in Bournemouth on Westover Road. We've done a huge exercise with local businesses, residents and stakeholders to bring forward some of those bits of work that have come together to try and show different ways that we can make a difference. Really pleased that only this morning we've just had the new footfall figures from October, which is actually a very I think a very positive outlook for a number of our times, despite the very difficult circumstances that we're living in. Looking at our three towns in particular, Bournemouth is showing a month-on-month positive growth, and really interesting to see that people are staying longer as well. So actually, and of course, we're going to see it even more extreme throughout the month of our fantastic festivals, particularly with Winter Wonderland in Bournemouth and the Maritime Festival in Christchurch, and the Yuletide Festival, the Maritime Festival in Poole and the Yuletide Festival in Christchurch. But this is outside of the main season. We're seeing positive growth month on month in Bournemouth. Christchurch is performing extremely well, and we're also showing that the catchment of those that are using the Christchurch High Street is spreading. Again, working really closely with the new business improvement district, of which I'm a member of in Christchurch. But again, there's probably more we can do to support businesses during this time. And then finally, the footfall figures in Poole again show that month on month figures are showing positive growth. People are staying longer. We've seen increase in Mondays and Saturdays as busy days, increasing that catchment from the west. So good news across the high streets, but really keen as times get tougher that we look, and I'll work really closely with my colleague whose specialty this is, Councillor Nigel Brooks, about further things that we can do. So might be looking at bringing further papers on that in the future, but clearly some good work to see coming forward. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and actually, I just think it really is an important point. So where you started there in terms of some of the Future Places sites and the civic centre sites and the plans around them, linking back actually to the work we're doing around the disposal of selected assets. Because there are some of those assets where we're in historic schedules around disposal, and they're hugely important, aren't they? There's sites that not just are important to the communities, but they're also have brilliant regenerative benefit there as well. So I stand behind our strategy of where we're moving to and retaining those key strategic important assets, and really looking forward to seeing some of that work come forward on them. Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Mark.
Thank you, Leader. You have reminded me that we had a very good place meeting last week where we talked about fire breaks. And part of the conversations talking about fire breaks was about PSPOs, and we're hopefully that is going to be included in the forthcoming paper on PSPOs, so we can get some more support and enforcement to try and reduce the numbers of fires we have in the heathlands, which will benefit not only our biodiversity but the population as a whole. So I'm looking forward to that paper coming forward and the work that's been done by Martin Whitchurch and others in the open spaces team.
Absolutely. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I'm not seeing any other members showing on the forward plan, so I will just thank everybody for their comments and contributions, and look very much forward to our next meeting as well. So thank you, and I'll close the meeting. Cheers.